Thank you for joining me on episode 3 of the Follow the White Rabbit podcast. I love cooking and I promised you that I would show you how I live my life. And obviously I can't have a camera follow me 24/7, but I just wanted to get snippets in here that were of interest and might be of interest to you. If you don't cook, you might enjoy following the recipe. I'm not a recipe chef person. I make my own stuff and I throw things in and don't really weigh things very much, but there are plenty of books and other videos that do show you that. So if it's not your thing, don't worry about it. But if it is and you want to just enjoy grab a cup of tea or something and sit and watch me preparing our Saturday meal. We had a guest and I rather burnt the chips. There's a promise. I apologise for that. But, you know, we all get distracted and that is life. Anyway, enjoy and let me know what you think in the comments. I'd be really grateful. And if it inspires you to get in that kitchen and start making some pizza dough and getting some veg chops up and having a really nice meal, then let me know. And also you can let me know what you love to cook yourself, or if there's something you'd like me to show you how I cook it. Take care and enjoy. And here we are starting our journey of making some pizza with 500 grams of strong white flour. Add some dried yeast and sugar, about 7 grams and probably 5 of sugar. Stir those together so they're well blended. And then in a jug, measure 350 mils of warm water, normally about 250 of cold and 100 of hot water out of the kettle. I always say a glug of olive oil. You do what you like. I would say probably a tablespoon and a bit. And again, a teaspoon of salt. And you do need salt because it really does help with the bread, unless, of course, you have an allergy to it. I tend to just use the spatula the majority of the time, and you'll notice this dough's a little bit dry, and I purposefully left it like that. And the reason for that, I wanted to see if I could get a crisper base. So I decided to get in there with my hands and give it a good knockabout. It's quite therapeutic. If your hands aren't clean, then wear some gloves, but I'm a slightly obsessive hand washer, so I'm happy that my hands are clean. And then what you do is cover it and leave it for about 45 minutes for an hour. You can leave it longer if you leave it in the fridge. And the longer you leave it, the fluffier and more aerated it goes. So I make the tomato paste. We don't eat meat and dairy, so we make a really delicious tomato paste. I use sun-dried tomatoes in oil and a fair amount of oil. This is not your healthy dish, but it's as healthy as it gets because it's not processed in a factory or anything. This is just a little stick blender. It was just a cheap one, which works perfectly fine. And that is just to whiz down the sun-dried tomatoes because they can be quite difficult in a cheap machine. I use garlic granules, or you could use onion granules, smoked paprika and ground paprika. They work really well with tomato, and they give this sauce the most incredible taste. I also add oregano, but you could use basil. They're both excellent with tomato bases. Then, of course, I want it to be really tomatoey, so I use tomato puree, a good tablespoon, or maybe 2 dessert spoons. And for the sugar, I add a glug of the tomato ketchup, because that is mostly sugar. That's why it's delicious, of course. So whiz that up a little bit more and then leave it on the side just whilst you're waiting for the pizza to rise. So here we are after 45 minutes or so, back, and we're knocking back the risen dough. This basically means taking the air out of it and then giving it a really good knead. I then divide it. I only use around just under half of the pizza dough, of the dough. And the reason for that is we like a thin and crispy pizza. The other loaf I make is a focaccia, which I will show you another day. And we have that on the Sunday usually with pasta dish of some sort. Anyway, that's another story. So here we've just sort of turned that into a bit of a round, and we're just going to roll it out, which is not the easiest thing. I'm absolutely sure any Italians, grandmothers out there are going wild about my very unusual pizza. But anyway, this is the way we do it. It works really well. And even my omnivorous friends absolutely love my pizza. So you don't need the cheese and you don't need the meat or fish on this one. So just stretch it out a bit. Sometimes my dough's too wet to do very much of this. But this one, as I say, I particularly wanted it crispy. So I'm a cast iron person. I love it. It's beautiful to cook on. It's non-stick. It builds a patina. You don't put washing up liquid on it. A little bit of oil, tiny bit of flour, and then stretch it out and throw the dough on there. I use my fingers, and again, these specialist Italian women and men will be doing all sorts of wild and wonderful acrobatics with their dough. This is my way of doing it. And then I create some little dents, which just makes it fluff a little bit later. And while the oven is heating, I leave that on one side and prepare the veg. And then, sort of round about, 20 minutes later, depending on your oven, just before it gets to the temperature you want, throw the paste on and spread it around. As you can see, there's a lot of it. And this is where the taste comes in. And it is very, very delicious. And it's actually a great paste for pasta if you want to use it for that as well. I've prepared my veg, and ordinarily this is what we have. And that is some lovely thinly sliced red onion, cubed red and green peppers. And then I use the big flat mushrooms. I love portobellos if we've got them. And I just chop those up. They ooze a little bit and they're nice and oozy, which is good. And just sort of push it all in, really. It's not very artistic, is it? Just throw it on, see what you feel. And then pop it in the oven for around 30 minutes. I have normally, I confess, prepared my chips during the time that it takes to let this bread rise. So there we are. Terrible photo, sorry about that. It isn't as burnt as it looks. It was really delicious. So I use salad potatoes for my chips. A little bit of salt, chickpea flour, and some spice, jerk seasoning, Cajun, or sometimes just rosemary. Rosemary is really good with potatoes. You might wonder why I use salad potatoes, and that is because they're delicious, waxy, and they hold their shape and don't disintegrate. So I'm giving it a good shake and then putting a glug of oil. For those who don't want any oil, you could spray them or spray the pan. And that is fine. They don't quite go as brown, but that's okay. And then I put them again on a cast iron pot, a different one. And these, I'd got a guest that weekend that I made that, and I slightly overcooked them, but they are so delicious because they're great for dunking. And so this is how we create our pizza and chips. I love cooking. I'm highly passionate, and I really hope that you enjoyed that little video. Apologies for the poor quality of lighting. I used my ring light, but the kitchen's very dark and dark oak and terrible tiles. but it's a kitchen and it works beautifully well, and we're delighted with it. I would say that my passion for food grows with gratitude. When I was a child, we didn't have the opportunities to eat the vegetables and the foodstuffs, like sun-dried tomatoes, for example. I'd never heard of them as a child. We have great opportunity with peppers and red onions, and there were things that we had. We had some exciting foods when I was growing up, but I just think we're just so privileged and blessed today to have the choice. You can go into a supermarket and get pretty much anything you want, and it's just wonderful. So as a form of meditation, use gratitude. It's really, really easy. This is how I do it. When I think they used to pray over their food and use the word grace, God's riches at Christ's expense, and thank you. I can't think of all the graces that we used to say as children, but I say my own, and it really is a silent gratitude. I just put my hand on my heart and I close my eyes just before I eat, and I think about the people that have grown the food and prepared the food and sold the food. And I just thank the food for nurturing me and nourishing me. And that is a form of mindful meditation. And when you're cooking, it is a meditation. It's wonderful, the joy and pleasure of it. And the more joy and pleasure and love you put into your time in the kitchen, in the preparation, the more nourishing and nurturing your food will be. I will come back and do lots of different recipes. I am plant-based. What you want to add to anything I do that isn't plant-based is up to you. I make no judgment. It's not my story, it's your story. So if you want to add things, add things. But I will show you how I cook, and it's healthy, wholesome food. Oh, maybe the pizza's not the healthiest thing, but there's, very little fat on the chips. Oh, I love chips. So I think we might even have them tonight. Okay, I'm going to leave you with Oreo and some music. And if you want to use that time to just focus on her and her stick, listening to the music and focusing in on your breath. Those are ways to bring your blood pressure down and to make yourself feel more alive and healthier. Thank you for joining me. Take care.